We are on this August 16th going to provide you with our annual J.P. McCarthy tribute show. He was the legendary voice of Michigan in the Radio Hall of Fame and Marconi Award winner. Number one, really, across the state of Michigan for over 35 years. I was lucky enough to be his producer for the last 5 years of his life. Only 3 producers in the history of that long, storied career, and I was about 24 years old when he plucked me off the turnip truck and said, how about you come along and see what it's like to be a star? And so I will be eternally grateful. And so on this day, I will let you hear his voice again with highlights and some bloopers, too. A little bit of fun. He would insist upon that. So keep your radio dial tuned to this radio station. You'll get to hear Michigan's legendary radio host, J.P. McCarthy. Gary Austin, let's get some news in first before we get to some of the highlights. I know this is a day you always seem to look forward to as well. Good morning.
Well, let's see, MPS. It's Monday. So, yeah, why not? By the way, I've got to tell you, your JP tribute every year about this time, it's the highlight of my radio listening year. I just love the way you piece that together, chronicling JP's terrific life, both not just as a broadcaster, but just as an all-around good guy. I really enjoy it. And MPS, it's going to be a major distraction for me today, trying to listen to the show and also write my news and do my routine here as well. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great one.
Well, good. I mean, it's not a happy day in that it's the day he passed away 15 years ago, if you can believe that, on August 16th. But it is a day to play some of those clips and sorts of... And, you know, some of it's ironic because when you listen to him interviewing 3 or 4 different presidents of the United States, you see that some of the problems they had are the problems we're still dealing with.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit revealing in that respect as well.
But, you know, MPS, I want to say, though, it is a happy day in the sense we're celebrating JP's outstanding life.
Well, thank
and that's
you
the way
very
we got
much.
to look at it.
You bet. It is 10 minutes after the hour. Well, if you are a Michigan radio listener, you would recognize this song as the opening theme song of the J.P. McCarthy Show. And sometimes you got 30 seconds of it, and sometimes you got 4 minutes of it at 6:15 every morning. Why? Well, depended on what time he was going to arrive at the studio. After all, the song was 4 minutes long, so if he was running late, well, the song played a little bit longer. I kid you not. Because I was the producer, I saw this happen lots of times. He wouldn't even be there, and we would start the opening theme song, and we would wait. And we were 22 stories up there in the Fisher Building in Detroit, and we would wait, and we would wait, and the music would play. And then we would hear the door click, the security door, and he would come, toss his blazer over the chair, sit down, take a sip of coffee, put his glasses on, push the on button, and say, "Good morning, world." And that's how it started. And it might have been 4 minutes in, it might have been 40 seconds in, and the savvy listeners knew that if it was a long theme song, well, he hadn't quite gotten there yet. Maybe the lodge was a little slippery, or maybe there was an inopportune red light, or maybe one more push of the snooze button before they got to hear the most famous voice in Michigan radio history, my late guide and mentor, J.P. McCarthy. We're going to let you hear his voice this morning, too. This is the 15th anniversary of his passing, if you can believe that. And so people say, God, I'd like to hear that voice again every once in a while, and we do it once a year right here on this program. So let's listen to J.P. McCarthy here with a little montage of 3 different presidents of the United States. You'll recognize them all, of course. And one of them even took place aboard Air Force One, if you can believe that. Here is J.P. McCarthy with the Commanders-in-Chief.
President Carter, I think the Middle East was his peril and his glory. The shining hours of the Camp David Accord to the nightmare of Iran. Mr. President, you look so well. Thank you for coming.
I get along fine. I always feel good when I come to Detroit.
The last time that you were here via phone, we had the First Lady of the State with us. She just happened to be on the same program that day, Paula Blanchard, and we reminisced about the campaign in 1980 and about the Democratic Convention. And you did say that you were going to kick Senator Kennedy's ass. Those were your words, in fact, and you did. Have you ever buried the hatchet with the senator?
We've never had any personal animosity or unpleasantness between us. As a matter of fact, I saw him last month in Washington, and we had a very pleasant exchange of a handshake and a few words about our families. But we have been political opponents.
Aboard Air Force One with President Bush. Mr. President, the three latest polls I saw this morning, remember this is Sunday, show the gap's closing. Obviously that cheers you. Why? Why is it closing, do you think?
Because we're getting our message out, and because people are getting serious now about who they want to be president of this country. They're asking themselves, who do we trust to be in that Oval Office? They recognize that a lot of what they've been told night after night in the national media has not been accurate. And I think they also understand that though we have economic problems, we're in something global, and they recognize America is doing better than most of the international economies. So it's a combination of things.
Sir, what about the, what about the Ross Perot factor? He's also improving in the numbers dramatically, faster than you are.
Time will tell on that. I cannot read it, and I don't spend any time trying to. All I try to do is get my message out. I honestly can't help you on what it means.
Mr. President, a year and a half ago, immediately following the Persian Gulf War and for a couple of months thereafter, you could have been reelected by acclamation. There would have been no need for a referendum. What happened? I know you've thought about that.
The economy and the Democratic leadership. The Democratic leadership in Congress decided the only way we can possibly win is to stop any progress for this economy. And the bills that I put in to try to stimulate investment and savings were blocked on pure partisan grounds. And then, of course, some of the friends in the media wanted to see a horse race. They feel much more comfortable personally with Clinton, and they've gone after me with a vengeance. But it's changing now because the American people are fair. And they'll say, listen, this president might make a mistake. If he does, he admits it. And besides that, he has our trust and confidence.
There is only one way to introduce my next guest. It's a very simple introduction, and it is my pleasure to be able to utter it. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Good afternoon, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm great. It's nice to talk to you again.
Mr. President, one of the thrusts of your campaign was jobs. There would be more jobs. Jobs would be created. If the business climate isn't good, if there isn't an opportunity for businesses to do well, to be successful, there will be fewer jobs. I mean, that's just simple economics, isn't it?
That's right, but simple economics dictate that the President of the United States stop telling everybody what they want to hear and start telling them the truth. That's what simple economics dictate. I mean, in 1981, we cut taxes and increased spending and nearly bankrupted this country over the next 12 years, and we've been paying for it ever since, so that we had very high long-term interest rates, and credit was expensive, and job generation was weak. That's a problem, by the way, for wealthy countries throughout the world. Even Japan's having trouble creating jobs now. But look what's happened since I announced my plan and it started to pass its way through Congress, just in the last 4 or 5 months. First, we've had 755,000 new jobs in this economy, over 90% of them in the private sector, in the first 4 months of this administration. In the previous 4 years, we only had 1 million jobs. Second, in construction, part of the economy very affected by interest rates. In the first 4 months, we had 130,000 new jobs. That's the biggest increase in 9 years. Has that affected every state and every community yet? No, but it shows that we are really moving in the right direction. If we can get everybody in this country to refinance their home loans, their business loans, to take available credit because interest rates are lower, that will put tens of billions of dollars back into this economy to create jobs.
What inflation rate, sir? I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're short on time.
Well,
what inflation rate would you be happy with 1 year from now?
The lowest possible one. But if we got unemployment down to a very low level and every American had a job, it might be a tad higher than it is now. But we have right now we think we're in good shape on inflation. What we need in America are more jobs and higher incomes, and that's what we're working on. So this is a job-creating strategy we're following, and I believe it will work.
President Bill Clinton, preceded by President George Herbert Walker Bush, preceded by President Jimmy Carter at 30 minutes after the hour. J.P. McCarthy's golf professional, Michael Kernicki, who was president of the Michigan PGA and now at Canterbury Golf Club in Cleveland, Ohio, on the other end of our line. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael Patrick. How are you today?
Good. A bit of a surprise for you this morning. We're calling to talk about the PGA Championship and get to hear the voice of your old friend.
That was very special. And you know what? Doesn't time fly by? 15 years. But JP and I had some great times together that I'll never forget.
Indeed, and traveled to Ireland together, spent a lot of time. He was, in fact, president of Bloomfield Hills Country Club, if I'm not mistaken, while you were the golf pro.
Well, very much so, yeah. And you're right. His very first trip he ever made to Ireland, we were together. And he was a beauty because every time we went into a pub, he'd say, "My name is McCarthy. I think we're related."
And why not, after all? Well, that's terrific. And a lot of people would ask me, they do ask me, and I bet they ask you the same thing. What was he like off the air? And we know what he was like on the air. Was he just as friendly off the air? And they probably ask you that.
Well, they do, and they did, and you know, the reality is he was, because he was a guy's guy. He just, he played his game of golf with passion. He wanted to get better. He, just like any other, avid golfer, and he partied the same way. So, I mean, God love him. He was a beauty.
And he hung around with a lot of the tour pros, too. I mean, he was pretty close with Chichi Rodriguez and Lee Trevino and even Greg Norman.
Oh, yeah, he could get and Nicholas. I mean, he got anybody on. Well, like, you're his producer. You had the black book. I mean, he can get anybody whenever he wanted them. When we're talking about PGA Championship, I was on the Rules of Golf Committee for... Yeah. I worked 13 PGA championships set up and whatnot, and he would call me every championship I was at, and we'd talk about the tournament. Not unlike what you and I do, and only I was there most of the time because I was working it. And I remember Shoal Creek, and I had the first hole on the Friday round, and he was going to call me Friday morning. And he knew he had to call me, right out of the box here, like at 6:30 in the morning. And I had the first hole, and tee time was at 7:30. So I'm at a payphone on the grounds at Shoal Creek, and at I think there's a 2-hour difference or whatever. And it's 4:30 in the morning because I didn't want to in the traffic getting there because there was one road in. Anyway, the bottom line is JP would always say, "Well, how does it look there, pro?" And I said, "Well, JP, it looks pretty finking dark right now."
Yeah, when we come back from the break, I want to ask you, speaking of rules, about Mark Wilson from Michigan got his 15 minutes of fame yesterday at the PGA Championship. He's from Watermark Golf Club and happens to be the co-chair of the PGA of America Rules Committee, and made that infamous ruling there yesterday. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. But speaking of Greg Norman, this was a caller to JP's show who brought up Greg Norman, and here was JP's response.
Okay, but what's your point?
Okay, now Greg Norman has a tendency to be in contention when he gets into the backside, and then for some reason or other he loses. Do you know which hole gave him the most problem last year?
Which hole at Augusta?
Yeah, well, in general.
Which hole?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the 18th hole?
Well, no, not necessarily. I hope this doesn't offend any of your listeners, but it was the one that was next to the hemorrhoids.
Oh.
He had to...
Oh, you know what? I'm surprised at you. Shame on you. You're too old to talk like that. Yeah.
So there were some bloopers along the way, no question about it. When we come back, it's 35 minutes after the hour. Michael Kernicki, past president of the Michigan PGA and on the Rules Committee there at one time with the PGA of America. He was the head professional at Bloomfield Hills Country Club, but he's from the Grand Rapids area originally. Well, he's been all over Michigan, let's put it that way. We have stations in Grand Rapids. We have a station up in Harbor Springs, and he worked there too. So Michael Kernicki on what happened yesterday at the PGA Championship, and why did it cost Dustin Johnson $1 million? And is that Mark Wilson's fault from Watermark here in Grand Rapids? Stay tuned. We'll find out. It's Michael Patrick Shields, 35 after the hour.